Good, whatever it is that you're watching this. Hello, this is, or welcome to the What Did You Think podcast, episode 23.
23.
Yep, episode 23 in Spanish. Cameron,
Mm-hmm.
that's cool background you have.
Oh yeah, thanks. You too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You might be wondering why we have these. um we saw a pretty cool, well, we saw a movie that I think we both have we view differently.
Yeah.
You know, it is Dungeons and Dragons, and before we kind of get into it, first of all, no, this is not the one from 2000 or 99, whenever it came out. When did it come out?
I don't know.
I don't know. Have you
Time
seen
ago.
it?
No, I haven't. I just know that fun fact about it, but I've never actually seen it.
What's the fun fact?
Oh, thanks for asking, Ben. The fun fact is Jeremy Irons, who is in it, was interviewed and he was asked why he did Dungeons and Dragons the movie, and he said, because it's notoriously very bad, and he said, I just bought a castle and I needed to pay it off. So,
Whoa,
yeah,
that is amazing.
Yeah.
What a flex. Yeah. So I will say, before we of course like get into this, I do want to like ask you on your introduction to D&D, and do you play it a lot? Do you
You're looking
like
at
at
him.
all?
You are the introduction that I had to D&D. That book in his background is the campaign that we're still in. But that was my first one. Um, and I think it's been a good 2-3 years now, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah, I
is
think so.
kind of depressing when you think
I
about how many
wasn't
times we've
married
played it.
when we started, and
Yeah.
now I'm married and have a dog.
Yeah.
So
Time flies, man.
time
Um,
flies when you're not DMing.
but yeah, I've had an extensive history with it, but not as much as you've been. How long have you been in the D&D scene?
For a minute. I will say, when for the school we went to, D&D was like very like frowned upon. My friend Riley 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 B had, so we were going on a high school trip to Chattanooga, Tennessee, a hot destination for you to take a field trip to. So the way I was going to fill my time was probably just by watching YouTube videos, whatnot, whatever I can to pass the time on the bus. Well, I look over and I see Riley DMing this like game that he wrote and that he made. And they called it Tactics, and they didn't even have dice. They were using these cards to basically be these dice rolls.
Just getting
And of
around the
course,
system, basically, making it look like a
yeah,
different game.
yeah, exactly. So, and I even asked, "Are you guys playing D&D?" And they said, "No, it's Tactics." I'm like, okay, my bad. They all got these character sheets, and they've crossed out Dungeons and Dragons on the title of the character sheets to where it says Tactics. But of course, Stranger Things was just coming out around this time, season 1, and it looked interesting. I heard my dad talk about D&D a lot when I was younger, so of course I was interested. And I actually remember finding Critical Role on Twitter, not on Twitter, Twitch, and I remember like really liking their voice acting, but having like no clue what was going on because it was like episode 70 when I found them. So,
Right.
but I was watching it and watch all these players be captivated by what this guy behind the screen is doing and all these voices that he's doing. Because like, for being a fan of like movies and stuff, it's really cool to watch this like full movie basically being played out in front of you, or technically just like in your mind. It's just an imagination. But so of course I had some interest, never really cared about playing. I loved Skyrim, so I was like, oh yeah, it's basically the same thing. And one of the players got tired and wanted to sleep on the bus, so he was like, "Hey Ben, can you fill in for me?" I was like, "Yeah, I'll play for 3 turns," because I didn't know how it went. So I played and I had a blast for like literally the 14 minutes that I played. I was like, oh, this is so much fun. Well, I asked Riley, I was like, hey, by the way, this is my first time talking to Riley. We were not friends before this. In fact, I was not friends with anybody in this group. Like I knew them because we went to a small school, but as far as that goes, like we never hung out at all. I was more of like I was on the basketball team, so I was just kind of with all the jocks and everything like that. Um, but I asked Riley, I was like, hey, if you guys do this again, can I join? It was a lot of fun. And he goes, sure, I'm writing another game right now. It might be done in a few months, who knows? But he's like, yeah, I'll let you join. I'm like, cool. A year goes by and Riley, so so Riley was the manager of the basketball team. And I remember showing up every day for practice. I will see him sit on the bleachers, just writing away, seeing smoke rise up from his binder as he's just writing and writing and writing. And uh, it was truly a work of art. While we were busting our butts on the court, he was busting his butt on the bleachers. And it was truly amazing to watch someone so dedicated to their craft. But I asked him what he's been working on, and he said he was still writing this campaign that we were going to play. So of course, like, back then I like didn't care. I was like, wow, that was such a nerdy thing to do. I can't believe that. Of course, now looking
that's
back on
so
it,
nerdy, man. Let me know when it's done though, because I'd love to play with you.
right, right. I wanted to play, but not have the respect for what it was.
Right.
Either way, we had a small session 0 at McDonald's where we were just all making our characters and rolling for stats or whatever. And I remember I rolled an 18 because I mean, I feel like or I don't know how much of our audience plays D&D, so I'll explain like how a stat works where you roll.
I mean, I feel like just 18 is good. Just leave it there, right?
Yeah, okay. We don't need to get into
It's
the rules.
out of 20, he gets an 18. That's very mucho grande.
Not even out of 20. 18 is max.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you know nothing.
Well, actually, no, just keep going.
So I roll an 18 and I get really excited because I'm like, yeah, I'm the best. And I was so we basically get on this bus to take our next trip, which is to like our little student convention that we used to do. And we have our character sheets out. I named mine Paladin the Dragonborn, because Paladin was my dad's character's name in Skyrim, and I didn't know you could be a Dragonborn in D&D. So I just figured I'd name him Dragonborn.
But he's a human, right?
Yeah, he's a human. So he's a human paladin named Paladin the Dragonborn. The is his middle name. So we but I fall in love with this, and to this day we are still in the middle of that game. I wouldn't say in the middle. We have a few sessions left. But and that group that I played with have become like some of my best friends. Like we still hang out to this day. And in fact, I don't hang out with a lot of those kids that I played basketball with, just because we all grew apart. Because the only thing that really connected us was basketball. But with like this, like we are still playing this and we are still so connected with this. And truly like my best friends. Like whenever and the thing is, reason why it's like, man, he wrote like a really huge campaign for you guys. That must be, it's really long. It's taken 6 years. Well, yeah, he wrote a long one, but also we meet up like once a year to play. I kid you not.
Like towards the start, it was more frequent, right?
Towards the start, it was more frequent.
Just as people's lives get more busy, you guys,
especially like after high school, it has been the most difficult thing to get people together to play. With this, like, it really showed me like my best friends, and I thank this game a lot, and of course Riley for like kind of bringing me shedding light on this. And of course like the game is just a lot of fun too, so of course I started a group with Cameron, and that's currently the only group I'm DMing right now. Or no, I'm not even DMing. I think I just took like a hiatus and need to get back to it. Sorry.
No, it's all good.
But, as a result,
you
like,
get the excuse of being married, if
yeah. As a result, I really love this like IP and everything. I'm, kind of
Mhm.
protective of it almost.
Yeah.
And when they announced they're making a new D&D movie, of course I'm excited. I mean, how it can't be worse than the first one. And don't worry, it's not. Okay. Um as someone who has seen it, it is terrible. It is like I want to gouge my eyes out terrible. Um but I was really excited for it. It looked really cheesy and I thought I was kind of lying to myself thinking like, oh, the cheesiness is going to be a part of why this movie is going to be so good. I was really excited for this movie and I was kind of let down. But long story short, yeah, we've been playing the same game for a while and I absolutely love it. And I'm a huge nerd.
In terms of my like introduction, not necessarily to D&D, I don't need to go through my whole story because it's not as long as Ben's and it's not as interesting. Basically, my story is Ben was like, "Hey, do you want to join a D&D group?" And I was like, "Okay." And then I've been playing ever since. Uh,
Actually, we invited Cameron to watch us
dude, that
play.
was so fun. I'm not good.
Here's
Okay,
the thing.
so
As a human being, I feel so bad because like
no,
I got like to paint you a picture, I invited Cameron to watch us play, to stay the night at my house and watch
let
everyone else but
let
him
me paint the
play the
picture.
game.
Let me paint the picture. All right. This is the picture that will be that I from my perspective.
Okay, okay.
I at this time, this is like my peak social anxiety, right? Absolute peak social anxiety. All right. And so I haven't branched out of my friend group since like third grade. All right. This is still that time. I go on a high school trip, not the same one that he was talking about, this one a few years later. I go on a high school trip. Maybe I don't know, it's some trip. It's probably high school. And then I actually finally start talking to some of the guys that are in that group, specifically not Ben. I mean, I talked to Ben sometimes, but he wasn't the main guy I was talking to. And then what?
I was gonna say like I was like shocker, I was really loud, but like in high school, I think I talked to everybody. I tried
Yeah,
to at
yeah,
least.
yeah. It's
So
a pretty small school, and so he could feasibly talk to everyone. So everyone know who Ben was. He was pretty popular, but but yeah. So I'm just hanging out with this friend group, and part of me to this day still feels bad because that was like one of your last high school trips, and like you had a weird little kid following you around the whole time. But
well, no, honestly, that high school trip was so bad, but not for like your reasons.
it
It was
was
just because like our
terrible,
bus was breaking down
dude.
all the time.
We got dude. I don't want to get onto that right now, but
That's another
that was
episode.
horrible. Yeah. Um
That's when
but
we review the movie Road Trip
yeah.
with Egg Helms.
Egg Helms. So anyway, all his friends are like, "Hey, we got to do this tactics thing." And I don't know how I got invited because I still wasn't part of the group. And I just end up at your house, and this is my actual first experience with D&D. Um other than seeing it in Stranger Things. Uh but they're all sitting around the table. They got music playing. Riley's giving these like amazing descriptions, and then everyone's acting out. I don't remember what happened in that session. I just remember being like, "Whoa, this looks so cool! This is awesome!" And then going home, and then not playing D&D for years.
Man, I feel so bad because like
I honestly, Ben, I am so glad that happened because that's like a magical experience in my mind. It's just being invited by the
oh
big kids, even though we don't have that big of an age gap. I think we're like
no.
1, maybe 2 years apart.
How
Maybe
old are you?
I'm 19. I'm going to turn 20 in November.
I turned 21 in May.
Yeah. So we're not that far off. But I was just like, this other friend group that I don't talk to actually invited me to be a part of this thing, or at least to watch this thing. And this thing is also super cool. Like, it was awesome. But anyway, the movie, I when the trailer started coming out, when they announced the idea of a D&D movie, I'm like, okay, this is gonna make a lot of people upset. This isn't gonna end very well. I just figured that. And then the trailer comes out, and the action seems to actually be pretty good. The CGI seems to be pretty good, and there's like a general sense that the people who make the movie at least read a book.
Yeah,
Like,
like they know what it is.
there are so many times where there's these adaptations where it's just a name and no one really knows what's going on. This seems like the people watching it kind of read a book once.
Mhm.
So I get it in my brain. This is just going to be a standard fantasy movie with D&D salt. like just a little bit of D&D flavor.
And the way I had it in my mind is that this is going to be the best movie I'm going to see for like ever.
Yeah.
Because I'm like I love this. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
like I
Here's the problem with
can't.
D&D. The
Yeah,
best D&D movie you'll ever see is the one that you've played. Like
that's
there's
facts,
no
dude.
way to get a good D&D movie that you just like, cuz still as much as I enjoyed watching you guys play, playing it myself is still so much better, you know?
Yeah. Well, I guess we can jump into the movie then.
Yeah.
Um, all right, Red Dawn. It's not Red Dawn.
Oh, you got
No.
me.
Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Uh,
I don't like the title.
I don't either. I don't either. Directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. Stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez. Whoo, Reg Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, Sophia Lillis, and Hugh Grant. I don't think I'm forgetting anybody, but I'm sure I am. So, anyways, this movie, little like synopsis for you. These two thieves go on a heist. It goes wrong. They go to jail. They break out of jail, and now they're looking for his this one of these thieves' daughters. But yeah, that's kind of it. That's like that's the quest. Um, and already we can kind of get into Michelle Rodriguez and Chris Pine's character. They play uh I don't know their names. I guess I could read it for you. I have it here.
I mean, we can just call them by their.
Yeah. But Michelle Rodriguez plays, I'm assuming, a barbarian of some
I,
kind.
I feel like it's a barbarian. My dad said it could have been a fighter, but I do think that she uses rage sometimes.
I
So
think so too, and I think her intelligence in the movie is
pretty
low.
low. Yeah.
I haven't seen the stat block because you said
Oh,
that they released the stat
there
block.
are official stat blocks, but they're not character sheets, so they don't have classes.
But
They're
as long as
stat
there's
blocks.
numbers, we can kind of figure it out.
Right.
Um, Either way,
And
and then Chris Pine plays a non-magical bard,
yeah.
which that frustrates me already, guys, because technically bards are magical.
Well, they really emphasize the charisma part of the bard, I will say.
Yeah, well, but
So
he wasn't even good at that.
yeah, he was. He cheered them up all the time.
That's true. We find out Chris Pine has a daughter in the movie, and
Yeah.
we find out his wife died, and when they went on, that kind of that made him go crazy. So, and that's how we met Michelle Rodriguez's character, and they started stealing stuff. And they started teaming up with a bunch of people. Hugh Grant, which is a rogue in this movie, a stealthy rogue. Justice Smith, who is like a really bad wild magic sorcerer,
Hmm.
um, or unconfident, I should say.
I,
And
and I think now it's safe to say there's going to be some things that if you don't have like a certain level of understanding of D&D, I don't think we're going to explain everything.
this
Just
is like, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't watch this. You could leave it on though, so we can get the watch time up. But
true.
yeah, like it's probably not going to get much better than this, being honest. Either way, and
Yeah.
then Sophia Lillis, who is like a tiefling that can also wild shape, which is interesting. But yeah, so that's the party that it's made of: Chris Pine, Michelle, Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, and Sophia Lillis. And they have to figure out what happened that went wrong with the like little heist that they did that threw him in jail. And Chris Pine also has to find his daughter. So they go on this wacky adventure full of ups and downs. And I will say, looking at it from an actual like film perspective, a lot of things I do like about it. I think the VFX is really good. I don't have an issue with that at all.
I thought the
Especially
VFX were amazing. Yeah.
with like how many creatures and just insane stuff that D&D is. Like,
One thing that this movie did that I'm glad they did, which I wasn't expecting because this is so rare nowadays, there's a lot of practical costumes for like
yeah.
other races.
Oh, like one thing I love is the costume design. Especially just like with the characters in the party that we have of these like main characters. like they know how to show you with Lord of the Rings, all of the armor can look the same. It's just armor. Nothing really special about it. Elves wear a certain type of armor, orcs do. But with this, the type of armor that they're wearing really does depend on their like class that they are within like this movie. And I think that's a lot of fun too. And especially if you know what to look for, if you do have some history with D&D, you can figure out like, oh, this guy is a paladin, or oh, this guy is this, that, and the other. So I do find a lot of enjoyment with like you said, the practicality of a lot of these costumes. I mentioned the VFX are pretty good in this movie. Like I never like not at once, not at all have I like ever had this thought like where I was like, oh, that looks terrible and it takes me out. I thought it was really good throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
Um and it could have been really bad. It could have
Oh
been.
yeah,
There's a
definitely.
lot of room for error here. Um but I'm no VFX artist, so maybe this was really easy. But for me, I mean, I do appreciate how much time they took to the VFX. And I think the editing wasn't bad either. But as far as that goes, I really can't give many more compliments. I had an issue with the writing. I had an issue uh with the performances. So that was me.
Yeah,
But I'll get into the issues a bit later though, because I do want to hear what you like about it.
I think that this movie, it's really a matter of expectations and managing your expectations, because I'm like, this isn't like the next groundbreaking anything. It's just one of those popcorn movies that comes out a lot, that are just, they take an IP and they make a fun thing out of it. With D&D and the lore that's there, there's definitely a better movie that you could make. But I still, like I said earlier, there's no perfect D&D movie other than the one that you're going to play at your own table, because there's so much room for everything, and the whole point of D&D is that it's so open that when you try to confine that into 2 hours, you're gonna disappoint somebody. So I think they kind of took it in the best way they could, and they tried to make it the most appealing in a general sense, and just making, they're not adapting any particular module, which I think is good idea, because even if you did do that, then any players who are in the middle of that module, who would have seen the movie otherwise, are now not going to go see it. So just from a marketing perspective, that's a good idea.
Right, right.
And so by making it a new story with new characters and incorporating all the D&D flavoring, like I said, you kind of get your I think this is a best case scenario kind of thing in terms of making it enjoyable, but with just enough D&D in there to set it apart from Lord of the Rings or any other fantasy thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I'm also generally easy to please, though. That's the thing. I feel like I say that a lot. I'm just fine with a lot of things, and I understand this is going to be a lot of like, this is going to be a lot on a lot of people's boring lists or like worst lists even.
Mhm.
But it's definitely just enjoyable for a fun heist movie, because that's what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there is honor among thieves in this movie.
Yeah.
Um, no, and I agree with you. I did have fun with this, but there was still a part of me that was really frustrated as well, because what I was telling Cameron is that I don't understand why one of the most popular IPs can have such a hard time translating to anything else. Like same thing with like why have we had such a hard issue with video games being turned into other sources of media, and why, like, and when they are, why is it so bad? You know? Well, obviously there's Last of Us, Arcane, hopefully Mario. Those are gonna be good. But with D&D, you have like incredible story here. Why can't you make this? And I know you mentioned that people aren't going to go see it. I can understand that from like a financial standpoint. But with my thing is, it's like I feel with I don't think a movie works. I think 2 hours is not enough time for, and typically campaigns go on for 14 to 20
Right.
hours. You know what I mean?
The average session is a 4 hour thing.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, I get what you mean, and I think that if you want to optimize the D&D story adaptation, maybe a mini series is better. I haven't seen Vox Machina or whatever it's called.
And I really like that. I
Yeah,
really do. I'm a big fan of it.
D&D started out, it's been niche for so long. We are now in the same scenario that we were with superheroes a few years ago, where they were a nerd thing, and now they are just as popular as most popular things.
Right, right,
But the difference with superheroes is everyone kind of acknowledges and is understanding about, yes, superheroes are mainstream now. D&D people, and myself included, I think it's kind of fun, but I understand. Like, I feel like there's this want for D&D to still be niche. And if it was as niche as people want it to be, you could get more experimental, you could get more specific with your adaptations. But since the people who made this movie, obviously they wouldn't have greenlighted it if it wasn't as popular, but they understand that there is a general mass appeal for Dungeons and Dragons. And so
right.
they need to make an accessible movie to um to capitalize on that. So I don't know. I think this could open the door because it is still pretty good. It is doing really well, as far as I know. This could open the door for down the line. We could get more specific
Right.
adaptations because this is
Mm,
only going to make D&D more popular, even if it turns out really bad.
absolutely. And also, I will say, mm, though I am picky, you know what I mean? I think a really good way, I think going forward, like the best way to go about making this into media is like buy a TV show. I think Last of Us and Arcane both prove that is like they understand that like not League of Legends. There's not really a story. I mean, I'm sure there is like lore and stuff, but Last of Us, we understand that there's so much story, and for you to tell in 2 hours, like that's really difficult. It's going to be rushed, and you're not going to be as attached to the characters as if you had a whole series. I think D&D would be really good as a TV show, and if it's animated, I think that.
That would help a
But
lot. Yeah.
I think so too. Because what I was telling with Cameron is that your characters are doing all of these, you know, insane things that no human can do. And I think animation, like Arcane says, like or like Arcane does, it can do the impossible, but it makes it seem realistic within its like shows boundaries because it is animated. You are able to do a lot of these superhuman things. So I think that because I know all of Wizards of the Coast is listening to this, so I'm just saying, like, do that instead, and also hire me and Cameron for anything.
Yep.
Um, but with that, I can get into more of my dislikes, which are one of the biggest ones is the performances in this movie. I think a lot of them are bad. I think a lot of them are. I have a huge issue with the performances. I found myself like being kind of taken out by the movie. Everyone is like, seems like everyone is just reading off of a script almost. It feels like Hugh Grant showed up for a paycheck, and we're not allowed to talk. I don't talk bad about child actors, so I'm not going to.
I thought she
Um,
did fine, actually.
like I said, I don't, Michelle Rodriguez, I've never really had um a good grasp on it. Like, I don't know. Every movie I see, she kind of acts like this. I don't see a lot of. I've never really seen her get like have a lot of range when it comes to her performances. And Chris Pine was awkward. Like he was not great, but he wasn't bad. It was just like odd. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, so before the movie started, they did a kind of a Tom Cruise where they're like, "Thank you guys for coming to the movies. You're why the
Yeah,
movies are the movies." Which like that's fine, but I mean you're like 3 years late. Because
exactly.
the
Yeah,
movies have been back for a while now. And there was a level of awkwardness in that thing where all the cast are just sitting there staring at a camera, going like,
yeah,
"Thanks for being here," and then like that's it. That level of awkwardness is kind of present in Pine's performance
yeah.
throughout the movie.
I don't know why it was like that.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it was just like unclear because Chris Pine's good. but like as an actor, maybe he was just given like unclear instructions. You know what I mean? I really don't know.
Yeah.
Which does fall on the director, you know, because you got to be kind of clear with your actors on how you want them to do something. Um, but yeah, I maybe just didn't get clear directions. So, um, and I will say the two performances I like the three performances I like the most were also my three favorite characters in the whole movie, which was Regé-Jean Page, Justice Smith, and Sophia Lillis. I loved them three, especially like their characters in general. I think they were so good. It's like typically in cinema we do um relate more to like the awkward like the normal character almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is this like really bad sorcerer, because everyone else is like so incredible and or like or good at what they do,
They're
and
very competent. Yeah.
he's very not. So of course we always like kind of grasp and gravitate more towards him. Uh, but I really liked him. I thought he was really good, and I think his line delivery was like one of the best. I kept on cracking up at all of his lines. Same thing with Sophia Lillis. I really liked all of her jokes. And I think her character was one of the coolest too. Uh, Another person I really liked was the Paladin, who was Regé-Jean Page. Um, because first of all, I'm a paladin in my game. But no, and second of all, it seems like the most accurate to D&D, where like this is this is their backstory slash character trait where they don't understand sarcasm. Um, and I could really see like someone playing as this character, and
Yeah.
that's why I really enjoyed it too. Plus he was like the coolest. Like he was like just wiping out all these enemies. He had a cool sword that ejected from another sword or whatever. It was sick. And then he killed a really fat dragon, so that's cool.
I loved the fat dragon.
It was great. Um, but I think those three characters I love the most. I like Sophina a lot too, and I think the reason why I like her so much is we don't get a lot of her too. There is no explanation of. I guess this is gonna get into the writing because she's a part of these like red wizards or whatever, but the movie does a really bad job at explaining what these red wizards are. We
I mean,
just
I
like,
think you're just supposed to assume since they're wearing red coats that they are bad.
well, we're told that they're bad, but we don't really know why. So, I mean, because one of them like killed his wife, so we obviously have to like not like them. Um, but yeah, so we don't really know how Sophina got there. She just kind of was there. Um, which is fine, I guess I'll take it. But I thought she did fine too. And this goes to like the costume design where like she looks freaky, she looks insane.
Yeah.
And she doesn't look like that in real life, which is good. Uh
Oh, I was like, the casting is on point with
the
this.
casting is on point. But yeah, I mean, other than that, that's kind of all the praise I can really give this movie. I mean, there was a really fun chase scene involving the Tiefling character. I thought that was really cool. Um,
Yeah,
but
so I have some pluses to the writing that I think you would disagree with me on, and that's fine. But
well, let's hear it,
there
Cam.
is a lot of awkwardness in the writing that I think, and maybe I'm just giving way too much credit. To me, it feels like when you're playing D&D and somebody has a backstory that they want to tell, but they don't know how to naturally bring it up. So
Mm-hmm.
you walk into a room, get introduced to a character for the first time, and they just spill their guts on everything that's happened to them in their entire
Yeah.
life. Like that's very D&D, and that happens a few times in this. And on top of that, I think it shows this movie does a good job of showing how one of the benefits of D&D is it does leave the door open for players to get creative. So we and Ben already talked about the dragon, so I guess we can say spoilers. Not that spoilers are a big thing in this,
They're
but
not.
um there is a there's a at one point in the movie they get a wand that can shoot portals, which by the way I'm pretty sure they just use the sound from the game Portal, but
Dude. Yeah.
it sounds very close. But like, so they shoot a portal and it's like, okay, here's a portal here and here's a portal there. It's like, all right, so that's obviously what it's meant to do. But in D&D, you have the ability to like use your own player brain and do creative things. And so they do creatively use the portal
Right.
to put a portal on a painting and then put that painting in a room that they can't get in on their own and stuff like that. And so it shows how you can kind of not break the rules, but just play the rules in D&D to kind of do some creative things.
Yeah.
That demonstrates it pretty well. I think
Yeah.
this is a good movie in trying to get people to want to try out the D&D. I think that this is what's going to happen is there's going to be like a kid in a family or a dad or a mom who played when they were a kid who's going to bring their family to this movie. And then all that family is going to be like, that was pretty neat. I'd like to try that. And then they get their family to play a D&D campaign.
But also, if this is a good introduction, I feel like a good introduction would like to make this movie, not saying it needs to be because it does not need to be, but like maybe make them watch a 17-hour movie because that's more what it's going to be like versus the 2.5 hour movie. Because I don't think I've completed a quest in 2 hours in D&D.
Right, but it's for as accessible D&D is for someone who doesn't know about it or know enough about it, all they
Yeah.
see is that it's a game that takes at least 4 hours to play for one night, and also you have to read and study textbooks to play it. That
Here's
sounds
the thing though.
boring and tedious until you're doing it and it's like, oh, this is actually awesome and it's also not that much.
What
Like,
I love about this too is that you don't need anything. You don't like this is like you can't really see it, but if you go back in the video, Cameron's background is like all accessories you can have. It just makes your experience better, but you can still have just like for me when like with Riley's game, the amount of money I spent is $0.00
yeah.
to find some of my best friends. Like it is crazy. Now of course since then I've bought dice and stuff like that and I want to get more involved, so I've bought notebooks and stuff. But um like the beauty of it is that you don't need any of it.
It's
Really. You don't need
super
anything.
accessible, but just
Yeah.
until you get someone to tell you how accessible it is, it looks like the most complicated thing in the world.
Yeah.
So
And
that's why
it
I
is
think this
complicated, but
movie, it is complicated, but not to start. It's
yeah.
easy to learn, tough to master kind of thing. I think that this movie, since it's not 17 hours long, since it is kind of more accessible to a general audience, this is the gateway drug to D&D.
Let me agree with you.
All right.
Yeah. No, I do agree with you. I do. Um I I do want there to be another one, but I would not like them to follow these characters. I would like to see different stories, you know, with different actors and characters because like the places that they were using in the movie or do exist in the game.
Mhm.
Neverwinter. I think the Waterdeep was one.
The Underdark, Tribor, stuff like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. So I would love to see them do different stories and maybe even bring in some modules. Don't like, you know what I mean? Not like a full-on module, but like some inspiration from them. I
The
think that'd be
lore is
cool
so
too.
expansive that you can.
Yeah,
I mean, we got in this movie, we got obviously the monsters and stuff. We also get references to Mordecai and stuff like that. But
Mordecai and Rigby. Yeah.
yeah, as the I think you're right. This is D&D is the perfect IP to do an anthology series for.
There's so much you can do, but their video games suck. Like a lot of like the movies, the one movie sucks. You just got to be careful. But I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens next. I would like to maybe see it be made by different people
Yeah,
entirely.
for as much as I
Um,
say there's parts of this that I like, there is a lot of the I don't know, I'd say Josh Whedonisms where it's Joss Whedonisms where it's like he's right behind me, isn't he? That kind of
yeah.
stuff.
I would love also to like get actual D&D players, like people that have really brought forward D&D as a whole to get more involved with these movies too. I mean, Matt Mercer, I think, would be really interested if you asked him to help write something for this. You know what I mean? Or
Hmm.
even like pay homage to some of these content creators like Matt Colville or
I think it'd be nice
Cameron
to
and
start.
Ben.
It'd be
Like, you know,
exactly,
just
exactly. It'd be nice to see a Matt Mercer or a Brennan Lee Mulligan or a Matt
yeah.
Colville cameo. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Also, I wish we saw the Australian version because the cast of Auntie Donna was in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would have been great. Um, other than that, I have nothing else to really say about this.
Yeah. I think, and I feel like you're going to agree with me on this. And despite us coming out of it feeling differently about the movie, I think we agree on most things. But I'd say that if this movie looks good to you, you'll probably like it if you understand what it is going into it, that it's just a fun kind of heist thing with D&D flavoring. If you think that you would like Dungeons and Dragons just from the trailer or even from watching the movie or just from other exposure to it and you haven't tried it yet, the hardest part of playing Dungeons and Dragons is finding people and time for it. The
And
game
Cameron and
itself,
I will play with each and every one of you.
um, maybe once we start a Patreon, we can have like a $10,000 tier, and we can do a D&D campaign with them. But um, but yeah, honestly, I think the best thing that this movie can do is introduce you to the actual game itself,
Mhm.
and I think that's where you should put your time and money into if a generic heist movie doesn't sound good to you,
Yeah.
because
Well,
D&D is whatever you make it. So
facts.
yeah.
Factoid. Well, Cameron, do you have anything else?
Uh, nope.
Ben, do you have anything else? Uh, no. Well,
Meow.